Terminus is not one of the more memorable Doctor Who stories, but I do remember owning the novelisation by Stephen Gallagher. It was one of the first books I read that had no chapters, so it felt very grown up. This must have been before I started reading Terry Pratchett. So I am quite familiar with the plot, but the on-screen execution is sadly well below par, and it's one of the weaker stories of the era. That said, the first episode is probably the strongest, as Turlough sabotages the TARDIS on the orders of the Black Guardian, which is a good way to move his story on a bit without having to hurt the Doctor. Unfortunately, he is then kept away from the Doctor for the rest of the story, and all of his scenes are with Tegan. This is not necessarily a bad idea, as there will be these two companions going forward, so establishing their dynamic does make sense. Turlough could have told her exactly how he ended up in an English public school. Tegan could have told him all about her past adventures with the Doctor, and it would have been a good way to explore both of their characters. Instead, they just bicker a lot, and all of their scenes are completely superfluous to the actual story, so it feels like a wasted opportunity. Meanwhile, the Doctor goes off after Nyssa, but she is separated from him early on, so he is left with no companions. To fill the gap, we get two dashing space pirates with big goldfish bowl helmets and flowing white cloaks. They look like they've just stepped straight out of a music video, and it's very hard to take them seriously. Carrie is played by Lisa Goddard, another one of those ubiquitous 1980s TV personalities who were all over sitcoms and quiz shows. Her performance is adequate, certainly better than Beryl Reid's was, but she's really just somebody for the Doctor to talk to. And her companion Olvia is just there to get into fights. Elsewhere we meet the crew of Terminus, the Veneer, who all wear distinctive skeleton armour and stylised masks, which look quite impressive, until you realise that they can't talk without lifting up their visors. Like Warrior's Gate, the crew are all male, with little to distinguish between them. It was probably easier to tell them apart in the novelisation. Also on board is the Garm, a big shaggy dog with glowing red eyes, who looks like he's come straight out of a kids' show. Apparently he was intended to be shown only in silhouette, which would have been far more effective. And the climax involves the Garm pushing a lever to prevent the destruction of the entire universe, which raises the stakes to a quite unbelievable level. Nyssa makes her final appearance here. It's a mixed story for her. Her final scene is very strong, but for most of the story she's dying of a deadly disease, so doesn't have much to do except faint and get carried around a lot. The scene where she removes her skirt is completely gratuitous. Admittedly, she is wearing another skirt under it, so it's not like she's down to her knickers, but it still doesn't make much sense. It might have worked better if she started the story wearing her jacket from Mordred Undead, and then took it off when she got too hot. At least she recovers by the final part, and suddenly develops the urge to turn Terminus into a proper hospital ship, rather than just exposing the patients to massive doses of radiation and hoping for the best. The farewell scene with the Doctor and Tegan is full of emotion. Clearly the actors all got on extremely well, and that shows on screen. Nyssa does come back in the Big Finish audios, and in one of the Blu-ray trailers, and there's been hints that she ends up in a relationship with Tegan, but I think that's a bit of a stretch. I prefer to think that she's still out there saving lives. The DVD has about 30 minutes of extras. Breaking Point is a 22-minute documentary, where the writer talks about the influences of Norse mythology, and we hear about all the production problems that made the filming overrun, which would explain a lot. And we learn that Nyssa leaving was not Sarah Sutton's choice. Origins of the Universe is a 6-minute feature, where Sir Patrick Muir and another scientist tell you all about the current theories of how the universe started. We also get to see some of the original storyboards compared to the final effects shots, and a few minutes of unused model shots. Overall, it's got some good ideas, but never really comes together. Nyssa's leaving scene is great, but the rest of it just feels like a weird mishmash of elements that don't really belong together. The novelisation is probably the better version. I'll give it 4 out of 10. Next week, Enlightenment. Lots more extras on that one, including a whole new edit that I haven't seen before. So subscribe to see what I think of that, and I'll see you next time.